Shin Towers. People that are a part of the Z2A community or my personal friend groups have heard of these nicknamed towers. They're made to be challenging and extremely stressful. They were made to test the patience and mentality of players who were even good enough to try them. These towers required precision and pure concentration, and it seemed like nobody wanted to challenge them whatsoever. Until then. So without further ado, let's go back to the first ever Shin Tower. Steeple of Purest Anarchy. So before I talk about that, I will need to make some clarifications. Firstly, what is a Shin Tower and what qualifies as one? Well, they're usually towers made by me that are mainly soul-crushing difficulty, ranging from insane to catastrophic. Their sole purpose is to be relentless. One fail can send you cascading into absolute devastation. Most of them are quite old, so the gameplay can be quite dated. A lot of them are purist as well, meaning they use no client-sided objects. The difficulty mainly comes from challenging wrap routes and consistent raw skill checks. Secondly, why are we talking about a steeple rather than a tower? Well, if we check what game Steeple of Purest Anarchy was made for, it was meant to be placed in Ring 5 of a fan game known as Living's Towers of Hell. Since the max floors for the Towers category was 5, this is completely valid and therefore the video makes sense. So now we cleared that out of the way, let's go over these Shin Towers. Steeple of Purest Anarchy is an extreme difficulty purist steeple dating back to July 29th, 2020, which means this is the first iteration of a Shin Tower. This is a steeple probably considered enjoyable and beautiful for its time, with the floor 4 extension, the support beams, and the mini tower section, but nowadays it's considered sort of bland and very inconsistent. The first 4 floors are not too tough and can probably be done with enough practice. The extension is long and very tedious, but definitely doable. However, the last floor has a huge difficulty spike, and is the sole reason why the steeple is so hard. This floor goes on for ages. The black color makes it hard to see, the punishing nature of it makes it scary, and the jumps are ridiculous and plain dumb for an extreme. In fact, the majority of people who play it call the steeple terrifying from how harsh floor 5 is. The mini tower is just a slap to the face. Ascending up a confined space with tons of idiotic wrap routes and head hitters was the icing on the cake. The only thing slightly saving the mini tower section are the safety nets on each floor, but that's about it. This was really hard even for today's standards. Steeple of Purest Anarchy is quite forgotten, however, compared to the next tower. Tower of Senseless Internal Pain. I already made a video about this tower, so I'll try to keep it brief. With its creation date being August 30th, 2020, and it being the second Shin Tower, Tower Senseless Eternal Pain, while not being the hardest tower, was the most impactful tower I ever made. Most people who played through it really loved the tower. Despite the difficulty spikes at the last half of the tower and rather repetitive gameplay, people considered it really good. Even Coded, a former staff member of the game, said that it was the best extreme tower he has ever played, which was mind-blowing. When talking about the difficulty itself, it's not as inconsistent as Steeple of Purest Anarchy. However, it's a lot longer and maintains that punishing nature throughout the whole thing. A single mistake will make you a goner. There are actually 2 versions of this tower, the classic version and the new version. The new version was implemented on February 9th, 2021, which made some changes to the gameplay and more decoration. The classic is still available on their profile if you want to compare the 2 towers. This tower does have 5 victors, however. It's quite a daunting tower and pretty rage-inducing though, if I'm being honest. Still not as daunting as terrifying. We'll get there soon. It's time to talk about Tower of Elaborate Solutions. This tower differs a lot from the previous towers. For one, this is a puzzle tower, mixed with some insane difficulty gameplay. The puzzles within the tower are some of the toughest ones people in the community have ever seen. One of them was the infamous chess puzzle on floor 10, which was taken from Untitled Door Game. It was really hard because there were tons of mistakes in that specific puzzle, so I had to nerf it and fix it up. There also exists a hint button. Upon pressing it, hints will be given out to you on many of the confusing puzzles, but will buff the purest gameplay to extreme difficulty. You will also have to do the neatified version of Toasted in order to proceed on floor 10. This tower is very long. To show how long it usually takes to beat it, over the course of several months up until the present, 4 people have been able to beat it, and all of their times were above 100 minutes, with the highest one being 202 minutes. That is over 3 hours long. Tower of Painful Remembrance is next, and it's one hell of a purest terrifying tower. This was actually finished before Tower of Elaborate Solutions, taking only 2 weeks, and oh boy is it an experience. The purpose of this tower are nostalgic songs and to showcase a really crazy yet cool looking idea. Those islands you see at the top of the tower are known as the 8 Nostalgic Islands of Torture, each island referencing an old Roblox game. However, since it's purest, there's nothing below you to save yourself, so nerf control is very important for this tower. Plus, there's a final stretch too. It seemed like nobody wanted to even try to grind this tower, so it remained unbeatable. Tower of Problematic Impediments is a forgotten, insane tower dating back to January 25th, 2021. However, the reason why this segment will be so short is because there isn't anything unique about the tower. In fact, the gameplay is absolutely terrible and low quality. It was clearly rushed, and it probably won't be used in ZTOA at all unless Z doesn't know what to do for towers anymore. It has no victors, but I don't want to look at this tower anymore. Let's just move on from this hellhole. Tower of Cruel Underestimated Parkour is next, and this is by far the hardest Shin Tower I've made so far. It's the sequel to Tosip, and although it was aiming for terrifying, the jumps are so hard that the whole tower may as well be catastrophic. Taking 2.5 months to finish, the quality of the tower does vary quite a bit throughout. Even though it's worse than its predecessor, some people still found it pretty decent. Obviously, there hasn't been a single victor yet, so we'll move on to the next tower. It took 4 months until I started on a new Shin Tower, and in my opinion, it's one of my best ones I've made. Tower of Unfortunate Conscious Deliberation, a non-purist terrifying tower that actually has quite a few creative elements. The only things that make this tower not perfect are the entirety of floor 7, floor 5's outside section, and floor 9's uncomfortable jumps and stuff. Other than that, it's not too shabby of a Shin Tower. It's also not that punishing compared to things like Steeple of Pierce Anarchy or Tower of Painful Remembrance. It's still quite a challenge, however. It still requires immense skill and consistency to even get far in that tower. I can proudly say though that this Shin Tower is actually decent. Tower of Just Hard Gameplay Revamp is an insane tower that revamps its OG form dating back to June 5th, 2020. It's pretty hard for an insane, but has a safety net at floor 6. There's nothing too special about this tower, but it's an overall an okay tower at best. The design of the frame is pretty nice, and there's around 1 or 2 victors. The final Shin Tower is Tower of Silent Panic, an insane tower created on June 8th, 2022. This tower is actually pretty short, but it's way more punishing than the other towers in this video. The jumps are also very weird and wacky, but unique in a sense. It is slightly inspired by some geometry-ass stuff like the club step monsters every 2 floors. A couple of people have completed this tower though, so it's not too important. So now begs the question. What's with the video name being about the reign of these Shin Towers? Well, let's take SOPA, TOPR, 2Cup, and TOUCD. They all share one thing in common. They're meant to be very tough and have intricate sections. They're made to ensure no one dares to try to grind them. Surely with all the descriptions of the gameplay of those towers, They wouldn't have victors anytime soon, right? That's what I thought after all, finishing these towers. I told myself that no one would ever do them. Well, I could not have been more wrong. Nor could I have been so glad to be that wrong. I mentioned how intense SOPA is with the amount of patience needed to beat it. However, against all odds, on August 14th, 2021, Kyle the Gamer 25 became the first victor of the steeple. It took pretty much 2 years for a victor on the steeple. Seeing this happen just blew my mind. 15 days later, Mark MM009 became the second victor. This was just insane. SOPA was now scratched off the podium of the unbeatable Shin Towers. 3 remained. Let's go over to TOPR next. It would be so obscene to even attempt this tower. It was too punishing, too inconsistent, too long. It was really difficult to get the tower down. But surprisingly, Kyle the Gamer 25 and Him Vegetables Hulk decided to check out the tower and practice it. They started getting pretty good at the tower, and unbelievably, after only 1 day of grinding, on January 17th, 2022, Kyle the Gamer 25 did it.
Yes! Yes! Yes!
Friends of Kyle were absolutely shocked, including myself. Kyle managed to pass through everything within 1 day of playing the tower. Just like that, TOPR had been scratched off the podium. That's not all. On the same day, Him Vegetables Hulk fell on 4-7 legit. This was just incredible. All that's left is TOUCD and 2 Cup. Unfortunately, they don't have any victors yet. Keyword yet. I can mention really good progress on both of those towers. They're actually pretty far in. On January 18th, 2022, just 1 day after the big TOPR win, Kyle the Gamer 25 decided to try out TOUCD. Slowly, he started showcasing his progress. He fell at the end of 4-4, then failed 4-5 outside.
I still failed. Okay. That jump is quite the difficulty spike.
And then surprisingly, he reached 4-7 of this monster of a tower. Even though 4-7 is a run killer, that's really good progress for just a few days of playing it. For 2 Cup, the aforementioned hardest Shin Tower I made so far, Hikate Zoe claims to have reached 4-5 of it legit. If that's the case, that's really impressive for a near catastrophic tower. If even one of those towers gets beaten, I would seriously congratulate the winner and probably give them a shout out or a reward or something. We can only see. That's all, right? That's all the Shin Towers there are, right? Well, yes. At least for the humanly possible. But there exists creations made by me, so hard, so undeniably precise and difficult, so hellish, that there's most likely no hope of any progress on them. Tower of Disengaging Lunacy, a near high horrific Pierce tower that's extremely hard. And the nil test, a 21-4 nil neat, just on the brink of humanly impossible. Neats are also a thing, like not even a surplus of extra obstacles, an extreme difficulty neat predating Tosif that is extremely lengthy. And not even an Inside Out, a remix neat made to turn Tower of Inception from Jato into a good neat, only to end up being worse. Whatever the creation, they're all made by me. And if you try to grind them, you'll be in for quite a horrible experience. Thanks for watching.